Off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, right now, two tectonic plates are locked in a slow, silent collision, and they haven't moved in over 300 years. That's the problem. Picture the Pacific coast on a normal Tuesday morning. Portland, Oregon. Coffee shops open, commuters crossing bridges, children walking to school. Nearly 10 million people going about their day completely unaware of what's building beneath their feet. The Cascadia Subduction Zone stretches 700 miles from Northern California all the way to British Columbia. The Juan de Fuca plate is grinding beneath the North American plate at roughly 40 millimeters per year. It sounds slow. It isn't. That's 40 millimeters of pressure accumulating every single year for 3 centuries with nowhere to go. In 2022, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network published updated modeling that reclassified Cascadia as one of the most dangerous fault systems on the planet. Not because of what it's doing, because of what it isn't doing. The last time this fault fully ruptured was January 26, 1700. We know the exact date because Japanese coastal records documented the tsunami that crossed the Pacific that night. No warning, no seismograph, just silence, and then a wave. 325 years of stored energy. Geologists call this a locked zone. The plates aren't slipping gradually, they're stuck. Pressure is building like a spring being compressed, and when that spring finally releases, USGS models project a magnitude 9 or greater earthquake along the full length of the fault. Think about what that means. Not a 7, not an 8, a 9.0 or higher, sustained for 4 to 6 minutes of continuous violent shaking. Most buildings in the region were constructed before modern seismic codes. The bridges, the hospitals, the water mains. If you've ever wondered what happens to a modern city when the ground shakes for 6 straight minutes, we're going to show you exactly that, in detail. But before we get there, if this is your first time on the Doomsday Archive, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Every week we cover the disasters science says are inevitable. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And right now, there's one thing nobody's explaining about this fault, something the standard news coverage leaves out entirely. We'll get to it in part 2. So how does a fault this dangerous stay so quiet for so long? The answer is in the geology. Most people think of earthquakes as sudden events. A fault slips, the ground shakes, it's over. Cascadia doesn't work that way. This is a megathrust fault, the largest category of fault system on Earth. The Juan de Fuca plate isn't just sliding sideways, it's diving downward, bending beneath the continent, dragging the seafloor with it. That downward drag is what makes the eventual rupture so catastrophic. When the fault finally unlocks, the seafloor doesn't just shake, it lurches upward, violently, by as much as 30 feet in some projections. That upward movement displaces an enormous column of ocean water in minutes. A tsunami. NOAA's most recent Cascadia tsunami modeling, updated in 2023, projects wave heights of 40 to 100 feet along portions of the Oregon and Washington coast. The wave arrives at the shoreline in 15 to 30 minutes after rupture. Some communities in as few as 10. Think about that for a second. 10 minutes. No seawall in the region is designed for a 100-foot wave. But here's what they're not telling you in the standard briefings. The inland risk may be even worse than the coast. When a magnitude 9 hits and sustains for 4 to 6 minutes, liquefaction occurs across the Willamette Valley. The soil essentially becomes liquid, Foundations fail. Underground infrastructure, gas lines, water pipes, fiber networks collapses. Dogami estimates that a full Cascadia rupture would render the I-5 corridor, the main highway connecting Seattle, Portland, and the entire Northwest, impassable in both directions for weeks. Seattle sits on reclaimed tidal flats. Portland bridges span a river on saturated soil. Both cities have unreinforced masonry buildings in their cores, the type that performed catastrophically in the 1995 Kobe earthquake. And in 2024, a new study published in the journal Nature Geoscience revised the rupture probability upward. The estimated chance of a full Cascadia rupturing within the next 50 years, 37%. Not someday, within your lifetime. If this is making you uncomfortable, good. Drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Because in Part 3, we're going to walk through exactly what happens hour by hour when this fault finally moves. And one of those hours is going to change everything you thought you knew about disaster survival. It's a Wednesday morning, 9:17 a.m. Pacific Time. The rupture begins offshore, 150 miles west of Portland. The initial jolt registers magnitude 7.8. Phones buzz. People grab door frames. 30 seconds later, the full fault unlocks. The shaking doesn't stop. 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes of continuous magnitude 9 motion. You're in Portland. You're on the Burnside Bridge. The bridge was built in 1926. What do you do? First responders can't move. Every major bridge in Portland is designed to be closed for inspection after a 7.0 event. A 9.0 doesn't leave bridges to inspect. DOGAMI projections suggest all 13 Willamette River crossings will be damaged or destroyed. Portland becomes an island. Meanwhile, the tsunami clock is already running. On the Oregon coast, in towns like Newport and Seaside, the alarm systems are a network of sirens designed for a 12-minute response window. NOAA models show the wave reaching Newport's harbor in 17 minutes for a distant source earthquake. But Cascadia isn't distant. The fault is offshore. The wave arrives faster. 12 minutes for 45,000 coastal residents to reach high ground on foot. 700,000 people live in tsunami inundation zones across Oregon and Washington. FEMA's 2022 Cascadia Response Framework estimates that a full rupture event could cause over 10,000 immediate fatalities from the tsunami alone. In a worst-case morning scenario, during school hours, during commute, that number climbs. But the shaking stops, the wave recedes, and then comes the part no one talks about. The aftermath isn't measured in days. FEMA's own modeling, Operation Cascadia Rising, conducted in 2016, concluded that the Pacific Northwest would be functionally isolated for 1 to 3 months following a full rupture. Roads gone, ports closed, supply chains severed. Think about your grocery store. 3 days of inventory on a good week. We're going to talk about preparation in Part 4, what FEMA actually recommends, what works, what doesn't, and one number in that government plan that should genuinely alarm you. So, what's being done? The honest answer is not enough. Not yet. USGS operates a network called ShakeAlert, an earthquake early warning system covering the West Coast. It's real. It works, and in 2023 it was expanded to cover most of Oregon, Washington, and California. What does ShakeAlert actually give you? Seconds, tens of seconds, maybe a minute for inland cities farther from the fault. Not hours, seconds. Oregon's State Resilience Plan, published in 2013 and updated incrementally since, set a goal: retrofit or replace all critical infrastructure within 50 years, hospitals, schools, bridges, emergency routes. The funding gap to meet that goal? $32 billion. As of 2025, roughly 12% of that work has been completed. Tested? Not at scale. Ready? Not even close. But here's what they're not telling you. Some of it is working. Tsunami vertical evacuation structures have been constructed in Cannon Beach and other coastal communities. These are reinforced concrete towers built specifically for residents who cannot reach high ground in time. They exist. They save lives. Japan rebuilt its entire coastal warning and evacuation infrastructure after 2011. Survival rates in communities with vertical evacuation structures were dramatically higher. The Pacific Northwest is watching, slowly following. And individual preparation makes a statistical difference. FEMA's Ready.gov guidance is specific: 2 weeks of food and water, not 3 days. A go bag positioned for a 10-second exit, a family meeting point above the inundation zone. These are not dramatic gestures. They are the difference between surviving the first 72 hours or not. If this video has made you think about your own preparedness, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear this information. And share it with someone on the West Coast. They need to see it more than anyone. The infrastructure gap is real. The political will is inconsistent. But there's one final number you need to hear. A probability figure that, once you understand what it actually means, changes how you see all of this. That's in Part 5.
So, what are the actual odds? USGS estimates a 10 to 15% probability of a full margin Cascadia rupture within the next 50 years. Other models, including the 2024 Nature Geoscience study, put the figure as high as 37%, 1 in 3 before 2075. Those numbers aren't hypothetical. They're derived from the sediment record, layers of sand deposited by past tsunamis preserved in coastal marshes up and down the Pacific Northwest. Scientists have counted at least 41 major Cascadia ruptures over the last 10,000 years. On average, one every 240 years. The last one was 325 years ago. We are not overdue. Geology doesn't work on a schedule. But the stored energy is real. The probability is climbing, and the infrastructure in its path was built for a world that assumed this fault was theoretical. It is not theoretical. The Pacific Northwest is home to some of the fastest growing cities in North America. Seattle's population has grown 30% in the last decade. More people, more exposure, more consequence. Here's what separates Cascadia from most other disaster scenarios. We know it's coming. We know roughly what it will look like. We have the science. We have the models. We even have the engineering solutions. What we don't have is urgency. The question isn't whether the Pacific Northwest is prepared. It isn't. The question is whether the gap between now and the rupture is enough time to change that. Some scientists believe it is. Others aren't so certain. What is certain, the ocean doesn't negotiate. The fault doesn't wait for budget cycles, and 325 years of silence is not a promise. It's a countdown. If you watched this far, you already know more about Cascadia than most people living directly in its path. Subscribe to the Doomsday Archive so you don't miss what's coming next, because next week we're covering a threat that makes Cascadia look like a warning shot. A scenario where the entire Atlantic coastline has less than 2 hours. No fault, no earthquake, just a wall of water moving at the speed of a commercial jet. That video goes live in 7 days. This is the Doomsday Archive. Tomorrow is coming. Will you be ready?